discussing about the future of the meetings industry in general, but regardless of the kind of event, regardless of who should be attending that event, there's always a location, there's always a destination. And there are destinations that add value to an event. And just to be clear, there are some destinations that complicate the attendance of the people that you expect for an event. So what should we be saying about the future of managing, of promoting, of encouraging people to go to a destination while attending an event, to the people who is responsible to do it, within the government or outside the government? What would be the future of managing destinations?
Well, it's an easy question for me because I just started a company to work on this problem. One of the problems of the internet is the internet doesn't give advice. It gives recommendations, you have lots of reviews, but it doesn't give advice. So what we're doing is taking Twitter data, Facebook data, blog data, article data, book data, local data, putting it all together in a database. Our first customer is the Austin Tourism Bureau. And you can actually ask a question like, are there great food trucks in Austin? And get a machine-curated answer. And when you look down to see this one food truck you want to go to, it might say, go to Torchy's and ask for the secret menu only locals know about. That information comes from social. Could you find that on the web yourself? Maybe in a day. But we are collating all this information to allow you to talk to a digital concierge in a way you never could before. And I think destinations have to understand that 80% at least of Americans read a review or look at social media before they go to a destination. But it's hard to do, and our job is to make it easier.
Jaime, what's your take on that?
Well, a lot of takes. No? First of all, I think we have to fight against bureaucracy, because bureaucracy is blocking us in the MICE industry to connect ideas and connect teams with local, state, or federal authorities. We have to have in count, for example, infrastructure, the way we have to attend to the venues, to go to the shows, where is the hotel capacity around the venues. But beyond that, we have to have put in the mind of the bureaucrats in local destinations the importance of the MICE industry. What is the impact to gather a trade show, for example, in Mexico City or in Guadalajara City or even in Cancun? What would be the impact to bring on a conferences? For example, private sector is doing a great job going internationally and promoting destinations in Mexico, just to face that they do not have the enough support from local or state or federal authorities to keep elaborating all the services around the conferences. So it is a pity that we are losing some efforts trying to put this together. And for example, if you go to Europe, when you go as an international buyer or as an international exhibitor, local authorities receive you like a rock star, no? In Mexico City, if you ask, for example, to the mayor to come and open your show, perhaps you will get the third or fourth level authority coming here, trying to see if they will have, if they will have the opportunity to be the keynote speaker, no? So that's crazy. And in some cases, we do not want something from authorities. The only thing is that put aside, don't block our effort. And of course, we will follow all the regulations in terms of security and safe and security, et cetera, et cetera. But this is something that we have to start with, fighting against bureaucracy and to develop an ownership feeling from bureaucrats about the MICE industry in our destinations. In such a way, they will embrace these efforts and promote all the infrastructure, regulations, and promotional activities to keep improving the MICE industry.
What's your take on this, Jose?
Well, I agree with them on this. It's very important that the government develops the sensitivity of the industry. Sometimes what we found, and new government comes in, the chair, and they seems to have forgotten all what the MICE industry produces for the destination. And they start to sell again the destination as a scenario of maybe other type of contents, but not a scenario where there's business content. like the one we do. So we have to work along with the government in order for them to have specific funds target allocated for promotion of this activity, because this activity creates one thing that I call the city content, the city industrial content or business content. This type of shows will happen every year or every other year, and will bring a lot of visitors from all over the world. And we'll have, spend a lot of money in our city. But the only way we could really do that if the government really supports us and see the activity as something valuable. If you go to other places, and as Jaime mentioned, we go to Barcelona, for instance, and you take a taxi at the airport, the taxi driver knows perfectly where are the dates of the show that's going on. And if it's a food show, he has information, and the organizer has provided the taxi organization information, and the government has done the same because they really appreciate the visitor going to that show specifically.
So maybe the first challenge in every single destination is to make out of the MICE industry a whole ecosystem. It's like a value chain in general, where the city, the destination has a role to play, and the other players of the industry have their own role to play. But the government has to look at itself like a player in this industry, not just like an authority saying the do's and don'ts.
That's so important, because
and it's all over the world, Terry.
it's true all over the world, and the convention itself is important, but your impact is multiplied so many times because your attendees go to restaurants, they go to museums, they travel all around the city, they may travel through the country, and the only reason they're there is because of the convention. And I think governments don't really realize the multiplication effect that conventions have enough, and also attract people, because it's not only, a doctor may have 7 conventions to go, he could go to this year, but he's only going to one. Why should he come to the one in Mexico City? It's a great convention, but also what else can I do? It has to be integrated.
Yeah. And the destination itself has to have a certain level of appealing, and that goes with some iconic places, some experiences that have been shared by other people in the past, and so forth. What about shows, events outdoors? We've mainly centered our discussions on venues, sometimes owned by governments, sometimes owned by private investors. What are the pros and cons of doing shows, events, trade shows, conventions, or whatever, outdoors? What's the future of that? Jose?
Well, I think that depends on the industry. The outdoors is an excellent solution for a big trade show. It always has to have some place where you can be indoors and have all these technology projections and presentation, because it's needed for a trade show. But there's a lot of need in terms of maybe heavy equipment that cannot be, it's not movable, or even if you have let's say cattle, bringing cattle into a venue, it's not easy. I remember once we did in this venue a yacht show, so we had to bring 60-foot boat into Mexico City and into the venue.
Here
at Central Banamex. It was really a nightmare. When we did it, and people ask us, hey, Mexico not even have, Mexico City don't even have water to put those boats. Why you do the show here? Because boats float in money, not in water. And the money is here. That was a reason.
That was hard to answer. 2,400 meters above sea level, no?
Yes.
What about outdoors? What about trends? What do you see, Jaime?
Well, I fully agree with Jose, and I would say nothing else, because you have to be very specific on what kind of shows you can have outdoor. Otherwise, it will be a lack of time, and there is no trend, from my perspective, to use the outdoor space for some other kind of shows or conferences nowadays.
All right, gentlemen, final comments about the future of convention, including destination managers, including professional organizers of trade shows, professional organizers of all kinds of corporate events. What would you tell them about the do's and don'ts for the industry in the future? And let me go this way. I'll start with you, Jose.
Thank you very much. Well, I think, share our experience We have been doing this for so many years, and it's important to understand that we are in the business-to-business business. People-to-people business. Okay, meeting people. And one thing that is very important is that people, just very parallel to Facebook and Twitter, 1% of people is the people that participate and do comment in the social media. 9% will interact with this comment, and the only 90% will just watch. We need that 90% in the show. So in order to trigger a visitor to come to the show and make the show successful, our strategy has to do more on the 90%, because the 9 and the 1% will come to the show, I'm sure. But the 90%, it's more difficult to bring because they are passive. And sometimes they are good buyers, they belong to big companies. And if you don't do a very strategic marketing and really trigger their intentions to visit, the show is not going to be as great as it is.
Interesting. The do's and don'ts for the future.
Well, first of all, I would say that we have to get rid of the lonely wolf way of doing things. I'm speaking to the mice industry organizers in Mexico, and of course, I would like to recommend you that forget about the situation that you used to think that you can do it by yourself. Everything by yourself, forget about that. You have to gather with your peers in the industry, and Profic is the best place to do so. And of course, to start sharing innovation ideas, to share the best practices, and of course, everything that can be shared. All the personal and every business strategy will be kept as confidential because it has to be that way. But we are sharing a lot of best practices that will improve us as a general industry, and the mice industry, trade show industry, etc., to foster this activity, and of course, giving us some much longer path to keep evolving in this kind of business. And do not fight against, do not fight 360 all the time. Just choose your battles. Choose exactly what kinds you have to develop in your businesses, and of course, go to Unperfect, try to be trained, talk to your peers, and that way you will be improving your activity.
Terry, the do's and don'ts.
Well, I think we've talked a lot in this series of programs about technology, how important technology is, and how our customers are focused on it, and they are no longer deeply reading, they are snacking. So if that's the case, then how do we use technology as a tool to get to the end point, which, as you say, is people to people? That's what technology is for, to augment the meeting, to make it a better meeting. But in the end, if people don't meet people, they don't have to come to the meeting. They can just watch it on their phone at home. And trade shows are about people coming together to do business. So technology is a tool. Adopt it, embrace it, but use it with the goal in mind. And sometimes people get so into the technology, they forget the goal.